How the movie described patriarchy without sugar on it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's something where, you know, starting with this idea of like, but Barbie, Barbie inherently is, Barbie was created first, and then like Ken is literally an afterthought. Like it was like, oh, well, this kind of, he looks good. It says on the box, he's Barbie's boyfriend. He's literally only defined in reference to her. And then my favorite character is Alan. And on the box, his definition is just says, he's Ken's buddy. And you're like, oh no, poor Alan. And his only attribute is he fits into all of Ken's clothes. That's what it says on the box, which I just thought it's perfect. But in that kind of like reversal world of Ken being the accessory and the afterthought, it then becomes a thing where then Ken needs his like, I am woman, hear me roar, but like for Ken's. And so in the kind of funhouse reverse of all these things that are going on, it allows everything to be, it's almost like it's funny, but locating what direction anything goes becomes difficult. I'm not at all comparing myself to Shakespeare, but I always think of like, this sort of like when it was all men acting, and it was like a man playing a woman, playing a man, and you're like, wait, what's happening? It's so gleefully layers and layers and layers, and that's something that this gave me an opportunity to sort of do that, where you're like, wait, so if now which one, do we want him to get this or no? Like, do you know what because it's not totally clear in this version of the world.
Oh, interesting. Well, I mean, I think one of the geniuses, one of the many geniuses of Greta Gerwig is, I think, the ability to provoke thought and to provoke conversation without necessarily feeling heavy-handed or, feeling on the nose. Like, the relationship between Barbie and Ken is unique to this movie, and unique to Barbie Land, and the Kens are in their own way fighting for their rights and fighting for their agency, and oftentimes stumbling and making mistakes and all that. But what I really appreciated about Greta's whole approach to the Kens was that they're almost like they're not evil. There's no malice. They're almost like children. And in the way that you watch children or you read about the children in Lord of the Flies, and they just start devolving, and it's kind of terrible. But at the same time, it's like no one's to blame. They're just kind of learning behavior that they're, exposed to, and then just kind of, without any sort of knowledge of their consequences, just doing things because they can. And so I think that's a really interesting commentary on humanity, actually, because I don't think, necessarily that we're any different. And if behavior can be learned, then behavior can be unlearned and changed. It means it's not innate, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I also appreciate their approach to humor. You said without sugar, but I think there is something, I know specifically about comedy. There's just a way of stating things as they are with a sense of humor. You're just more likely to receive it. And because this movie is just so hilarious and the performances are so amazing, I feel like anybody who watches this will leave kind of inspired to think differently, and much like he said, it's going to provoke thought and conversation.
Well, I think that is, the uniqueness of Greta and how she blends, something that's important to her to have a conversation about, but through a story and a lens that is gonna, keep us engaged in the conversation. And I really feel like the only version of a Barbie movie that I would have ever been excited to be a part of is one that kind of goes right for, what our thoughts and feelings and ideas about this female iconic doll, what they say about us as humans, and not so much about, a fun, bright story about a doll's life, because in the real world, Barbie says more about us than anything else.